Welcome to the first episode of Scale Your Impact. Thank you for showing up and tuning in. As you may have already noticed, I have a cold. It's not ideal to start the first episode of your podcast series with a voice that is not your natural voice. And I guess we are never in an ideal situation when we want to start off things or change the course of our actions. So I'm grateful that I still have the opportunity to start off what I wanted to do, and that's launching these podcast series. I thought this less than ideal situation also sets the tone for what you can expect from me in these podcasts. I mean that in our conversations, I will share my true state of being with you without trying to sound different. I will talk about my PhD research, which includes impact measurement, scaling, cross-sector partnerships, sustainable development goals, or many other topics, not just as an academic and a researcher, but also as a policy advisor and politician, as an entrepreneur, and as a concerned citizen. Most challenges addressed by Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, have root causes in the so-called wicked problems. Wicked problems refer to issues that are difficult to define and can be assessed as either problems or opportunities. To address these problems, an interdisciplinary as well as multidisciplinary perspective is essential, since they require other ways of thinking and also need the involvement of a diverse set of interested parties to work on solutions. That's why I have chosen the following title for my research: Embracing the Complexity or Wickedness of Our Collective Interconnections, with a tagline that reads, Upscaling the Impact of Cross-Sector Partnerships for Civil Society Organizations to Accelerate the Collective Progress Towards 2030 Agenda. It's a mouthful, isn't it? Well, what it basically means is that I believe if we want to scale our impact to achieve Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, we have to appreciate and understand the different levels of complexity we face in our problems, whether they are at societal or economic or environmental or any other level. And I believe we can only manage to solve these wicked problems if we work together across various sectors. Based on the United Nations Economic and Social Council report in May 2019, there has been progress on certain SDGs and their targets. Nevertheless, the slow progress on many SDGs is considerable, and the most vulnerable people are still suffering. The same report states that the global response is not ambitious enough to guarantee the achievement of the SDGs by 2030. Therefore, in a series of cross-cutting areas, action is needed to dramatically accelerate progress, and this requires political leadership, urgent and scalable multi-stakeholder approach. We have less than a decade to reach the goals we set for ourselves in 2015 after the closure of Millennium Development Goals. And by just doing things as we did before, we are not going to achieve them. That's why I decided to dedicate my life in different domains to play an active role in not only raising awareness about SDGs, but also to find solutions to step up the progress. So in 2019, I started a part-time PhD at Rotterdam School of Management, Erasmus University in the Netherlands. In my research, I aim at identifying and then modifying the interconnectedness of the three components that I consider act as catalysts to step up the pace of actions. Actions we are collectively going to take in the next decade for achieving the SDGs by 2030. These three components or catalysts are, number one, the positioning and motives of civil society organizations at the local and international level as not merely implementers of international development, but also as agents of change that play an active role in the balanced society. What it means is that we need to understand what encourages civil society organizations to form cross-sector partnerships, and we need to hold them accountable as agents of change and not just as organizations who implement series of projects without any agency. We need to look at the role of every component of a balanced society. The second component is the effect and configuration of cross-sector partnerships for not only accelerating the pace of international development, but also to make it lasting and truly sustainable. When I talk about cross-sector partnerships, I'm referring to partnerships between the three components of a balanced society, and that is the market, the government, and the civil society. And we need to understand how the configuration of these partnerships impacts their effectiveness and efficiency. The third component that I consider as a catalyst is the impact of applying the complexity-sensitive theory of change to the intended international development that not includes includes an alignment between the complexity of the problem and the complexity of the solution, but also the complexity of the changing context. As a practitioner in development aid sector, I have witnessed firsthand how the complexity of theory of change of the solution does not match the complexity of the problem, or how it could not be adjusted to the changing context of the problem. And therefore, it is very important to align these complexities prior to starting any projects. Interestingly enough, there has been so many research and case studies on each of these elements that I mentioned for you. However, there is a lack of a comprehensive and holistic approach or framework to enhance the impact of cross-sector partnerships of civil society organizations. And that's what I'm trying to achieve with my research. To that end, I have defined a wicked research model consisting of 4 interrelated models to investigate several variables and the relations among and within them. In these podcast series, I will walk you through my research and these 4 interrelated models that I have developed. I will talk about the existing research based on which I developed these models and how my own experiences as a practitioner have shaped my research approach. Of course, my other experiences have also influenced my research. For instance, my graduate studies in gender and ethnicity at Utrecht University has influenced me to add the element of diversity and inclusion in my research. As an example, in Model 4 of my PhD, I investigate how and to what extent does the type and form of leadership in CSOs influence their motives for initiating, forming, and participating in cross-sector partnerships. Investigating the answer to this question can unveil whether there is a correlation between diversity and partnership. For instance, would having more female employees at the decision-making level lead to more effective and efficient cross-sector partnerships? Moreover, this question can answer whether the type of organizational structure influences the possible forms of leadership and consideration for inclusion and diversity. For instance, would promotion of employees with ethnic minority background to higher decision-making positions be facilitated or hindered by flat organizational structure? My undergraduate studies at University College Utrecht, which is a liberal arts and sciences college, has trained me to take a multi- and cross-disciplinary approach to my research. And I'm borrowing theoretical frameworks from philosophy, sociology, psychology, to just name a few. For instance, the outcome of my research is deconstructing a process which is a term borrowed from Derrida. A process from an idealist thinking style to a synthesis thinking style. In this process, the way of perceiving a solution to a problem moves from a dilemma to a trade-off, and then to a puzzle, and then to a paradox. If these terms do not sound familiar to you, don't worry at all. In the upcoming episodes, I explain each of them for you. Each of my other studies and learning experiences have influenced my research in their own way, from my degree in applied mathematics and computer sciences to change management to strategic problem solving. I get to these experiences in the upcoming episodes as well. Through this research, I introduce new ways of developing cross-sector partnerships based on already existing data and research from cross-sectors, which would accelerate the collective progress towards achieving Agenda 2030. I aim at writing a manual, a self-help book for civil society organizations and by extension their donors and private sector partners to take on board for developing their cross-sector partnerships to play their active role in their yet-to-become balanced society. Besides sharing different elements of my research with you, at the beginning of every episode, I will read and talk about the original text of Sustainable Development Goals, as it was written and published in 2015 by the United Nations under the leadership of His Excellency Ban Ki-moon. I chose to add this reading to my podcast because in my conversations with many individuals who are quite passionate about SDGs, I realized that they have never read the actual text, and their knowledge is limited to the infographics that they have seen about specific SDGs. As you may have noticed, I mentioned that I'm a part-time PhD candidate. It means that beside my research, I have other engagements. One of them is running my own consultancy as a Nexus strategist, where I combine harmony and progress to bring about positive impact. I developed this concept because I have a vision, call it a dream, if you will. And that dream is that I want to live in a world with true personal freedom of choice, equality of opportunity, and the ability for people to thrive. And this is balanced with a personal responsibility to contribute to the collective good. I believe this world is possible by taking an integrated Nexus approach to challenges and opportunities. This approach needs to focus both on individual components as well as the interrelatedness and interdependencies of the entire system. Only in this way we can reduce trade-offs and create and hence leverage synergies. That's why through Nexus strategies, I bring back balance and harmony to the context in which we operate and apply change leadership to build a coalition of unlikely allies to collectively develop a pragmatic strategy. This research and any other activity that I undertake is linked to the dream I shared with you. And I believe we can measure the impact of our dreams, directly or indirectly. And if we can measure it, we can scale it.